My name is John Blake, and I want to talk with you a little bit about the intellectual styles as part of the Grip-Berkman assessment. The intellectual styles are actually how we process information. It's 3 sets of continuums that will all equal 11. How you process information in relationship to making decisions. And so we're going to look at 3 of these unique continuums and each of the spectrums within that. The first one is, how do you prefer to gather your information? This is a helpful idea as we think about processing together. How do we gather that? So the first aspect is the public contact. This is a preference for activities involving social contact and organizational interaction. You like to talk to people at the end of the day to gather your information. On the other end, you have detail. This is the concern for the procedural and detailed aspects of work. You want to read the report or study the facts from the source. In understanding the public contact versus detail and how you gather information, a valid question might be to ask, if you were buying a new car, how would you find out about that new car? Would you ask people about it, or would you want to know the statistical analysis of how the miles per gallon looked within that? The second one is the idea of what will our solution look like. And for this, our continuum on one end has global, on the other end has linear. So with the global, there's going to be a problem solving that involves a relational and a holistic process. Activities don't really need to follow a sequential pattern. Blue sky thinking is definitely part of this. Varied approaches are completely the norm for someone that has a high global score. Under linear, you have the idea of a preference for the activities and tasks that lend themselves to a logical, sequential analysis and intervention. There's an extra urgency in problem solving or in crisis intervention. Oftentimes this will look like an A to Z and very methodical in approach. If you want to know what this looks like, think of presenting a new idea or coming up with a new concept and thinking of how the implementation would look. Someone who's extremely global would think, well, there's many different ways that we could look at implementing this, whereas a linear would say, here's the most efficient, effective, methodical way that we could implement this at this point. The last continuum is really easily addressed as what type of problem are you willing to address? On one end, we have the conceptual. On the other end, we have the concrete. Conceptual, in essence, is saying that the synthesizing of abstract information, utilizing experience, intuition, and knowledge to find fresh and imaginative solutions. These people are okay with world-level problems, things that are very difficult to put together. They're okay with that. Someone on the other end that is on the concrete side of the scale will tend to be more analytical, a factual approach to problem solving, with an emphasis on the concrete, the immediate, the visible results. The local context for them is essential. And so often with this, you could pose a question in trying to understand this. Well, what about meeting the physical needs of hunger? Should we look globally? Someone that has a high conceptual score is very willing to think, well, to end world hunger, this is what we would need to do. On the flip side, someone who's concrete would say, in our town we have people who have very real needs. What do we need to do here? And so this is how these can interplay. It's extremely important to look at this. Personally, I've seen this be extremely influential in team settings, in the way that we structure our meetings, understanding this both as the leader or the facilitator of the meeting as well as your audience. This will come into play throughout this because this, again, is how we gather and how we process information. And so as you look at intellectual styles, make sure that you're taking this into consideration and this understanding, this framework, as you begin to meet together and as you begin to look at these 3 different continuums that make together the intellectual styles.